Good morning, students. This is a class for BA Part 2 English Literature students, and we will be studying Ode to West Wind today, a poem, an ode by P.B. Shelley. This poem is one of the most remarkable odes of Shelley. It's a masterpiece, you can say. If we talk about the form of the poetry, ode is actually a lyrical poem, often in the form of an address, exalted in its tone, and encomiastic. Encomiastic means when you appreciate, when you admire your subject, that tone is encomiastic tone. So the poem Ode is encomiastic in its tone, and it has a typical stanzaic form. Actually, ode is derived from Greek literature. Pindar was the poet who particularly started writing odes. Uh, Mostly, he wrote his odes in praise of the Olympic winners, and they were actually performances. The ode would be performed in a ceremonial manner, where the the ode was divided into three parts. The stanzaic form was divided into three parts: the strophe, antistrophe, and epode. Actually, these are dance moves. When you dance and move towards right side of the stage, the stanza that you recite is called strophe. When you move opposite, that is to say on the left hand side, you recite the anti-strophe stanza, and when you stand still, and when you stand in the middle of the stage, and the part that you recite is actually epode. So strophe, antistrophe, and epode. This stanzaic triad is the typical stanzaic form of an ode. Westwind was inspired by the powerful autumnal wind that Shelley experienced when he lived near Florence in Italy. The poem is actually in the form of a prayer. Any prayer has three constituents: a deity or a god or goddess to whom the prayer is made, then the worshipper or the devotee, the person who makes the prayer, and the prayer. The deity or the god or the supernatural being here is the west wind. The devotee is the poet himself, and the prayer is for the extraordinary power that west wind has. uh, the poet wants to get that power. The poet wants, the poet seeks this extraordinary power of west wind, not for a personal gain, but to quicken a new birth for the mankind. Actually, the poet is distraught with the decadence of mankind, and he wants a new birth for the mankind on the earth. The first stanza is taken up with the effect of the west wind as a destroyer and the preserver on the earth. The second stanza describes the violent commotion in the sky and the action of the wind in collecting the vast quantity of vapors for the autumnal rain. The third stanza traces the sudden convulsion done by the west wind upon the level surface of the ocean and its effect upon the sea blooms on the bottom of the sea. Thus, we see the poet has tried to give you an idea that west wind has, the autumnal wind has an effect on not only earth and sky, but even in the at the bottom of the ocean also. So ocean, earth and sky, all the three uh, uh, all the three are affected by the autumnal power, autumnal winds power. The In the fourth stanza, the poet addresses a prayer to the uncontrollable wind to lift him from the thorns of life, where he lies bleeding. Uh, Actually, in the fourth stanza, the poet talks about his own personal agony and the sufferings that he has found in this world because of his idealism. And in the last stanza, he implores, he makes a prayer to the tameless wind to become his spirit and blow the clarion of his prophecy. He wants to make a prediction to the world, to kindle, to bring forth a new birth in the dark and despairing world. This prayer is for poetic inspiration, and it's not seeking any personal kind of strength, but he is actually seeking the poetic strength for the good of mankind. So, in this manner, we see the poem is in the form of a prayer, and we will read the poem now. Let us read the first stanza. And in the first stanza, the poet talks about the power of west wind on uh, on the earth. O wild west wind. You have to see each and every word when you read Shelley, because Shelley is very, very powerful poet. O wild west wind. When O is actually a form of an address, the poet addresses to the west wind, and the adjective that he adds to west wind is wild. Wild means wild is used for, you can say, uncontrollable. Wild is one where there is no control, where one lives as one wants to live. So wild west wind means uncontrollable west wind, a self-willed west wind, one who lives according to one's own pattern. So, O wild west wind, thou breath of autumn's being. If autumn is an entity, being means existence. So if there is an existence of autumn, the breath of autumn would be west wind only. Thou means you, Old English form, thou from whose unseen presence, the wind is not visible, from whose unseen presence the dead leaves, the leaves that means dead leaves are driven, they are taken away, they are carried away. And how they are taken away? Like is simile. So, like ghosts, just as ghosts are taken away, driven away from an enchanter fleeing, just as they fly away, just as they go away, ghosts go away from an enchanter. Enchanter is actually the person who has who can control the spirits, souls. So, like ghosts fleeing from an enchanter, in that way, dead leaves are also driven away by west wind. What colors the west wind? What colors the leaves are? The poet says yellow and black and pale and hectic red. Or all these leaves are pestilence-stricken multitudes. Multitude means crowd in large number, and in large number these leaves are pestilence-stricken. Pestilence is pandemic. Pestilence is a disease, widespread disease. So all these leaves are seem to be uh, infected by a disease, and that is why they all fall down. O thou. O thou is an address for west wind only. So, O thou who chariotest. Chariot is actually a noun, but the poet has used it as a verb. Chariotest means to carry as if in a chariot. So, O west wind, you who carry to their dark wintry bed the winged seeds. So, the poet says that the west wind carries the seeds. The leaves are carried away and the seeds are taken care of. The west wind chariot them, means a special attention is paid carefully to the seeds, winged seeds. The seeds get wings by the wind when they accompany the west wind. So the winged seeds are taken to their wintry bed, dark wintry bed. Winter is about to approach, and in winter there is always a snowfall in England. And there, when they are put under the earth, the seeds are put under the earth, they live in hibernation. वो अंदर चले जाके where they lie cold and low. Where they means the seeds, the winged seeds lie cold and low, each like a corpse. Corpse is dead body, each like a corpse within its grave. Just as the corpses are put into graves in the same manner, for a certain time being, the seeds are also engraved. कब तक? Until thine azure sister of spring, until your sister. Azure is actually sky blue color. When the sky will be clear, it will become blue once again. Then thine means your azure sister of the spring. In the spring season is called a sister to autumn season. When your azure sister, when the sky will be clear and blue, then and the spring season shall blow her clarion. When spring season blow her clarion, clarion is actually the instrument, musical instrument that is used to declare the arrival of some great person, like a king. So when the king enters, clarion is played to announce its entry. So the spring season shall blow her clarion over the dreaming earth. The earth is sleeping because of the winter season, because everything is frozen. So, just to awaken the earth, the spring season blows her clarion, means arouses the sleeping earth from the wintry dream and fill. मैं ब्रैकेट्स के बाद वाली लाइन पढ़ता हूँ. Fill with living hues and odors. And spring season, what will do? What will the spring season do? Spring season will fill with living hues. Hue means colors. Odor means smells, perfumes, incense. So, spring season shall fill with living hues and odors, plain and hill, all over the ground, plains, plainland, and hills. Everywhere there will be flowers, beautiful flowers of different colors, and they will shed uh, fragrances. Now I read the parenthesis part within the brackets, driving sweet birds like flocks to flee, feed in air. What will the spring season do? It will drive the sweet birds. The birds have come in spring season, so sweet birds will be driven like flocks, like simile. So birds are compared with the flocks. Flocks means cattle. So just as cattle come out to feed, in the same manner the sweet birds will come out, means they will open up in the air. So this will be the effect of spring season, that the flowers will bloom. And now we go to the last part of the page, wild spirit. He does not call the west wind a wind, he calls it a spirit now. Because there is something, you can say, a sensitive thing. What the poet has shown in the stanza, he has shown that autumn has a destroying quality. It destroys, it carries away all the dead leaves, but it is careful enough to preserve the seeds also. So it has a spirit. So he calls wild spirit, or uncontrollable spirit, which art means are, which are moving everywhere. You move everywhere, and we know everywhere, we have already talked, everywhere the poet wants to indicate, the poet hints that in his following stanzas he will be talking about the effect of west wind over earth, heaven, and hills. Underworlds, that is to say, under the ocean, on the earth, and in the sky, it is moving everywhere. So, destroyer and preserver. Now he makes it clear, destroyer, west wind is a destroyer, but it is a preserver also. It preserves the seeds. It not only destroys the dead leaves, it also preserves. Preserver. Here, oh, here. This is a request. Actually, the poet is trying to uh, draw attention of west wind, here, oh, here, as if the deity is west wind, and he is trying to draw the attention. He seeks the attention of this powerful entity, here, oh, here. We will do the poem up to this part only, and in the next part we will continue the second stanza. Thank you very much for listening patiently. This is one of the most important poems, and one of the most memorable poem. So if you have any problem or any doubt in the poem, you can call me, you can WhatsApp me your problems. Thank you very much. uh, Shelley is one of the most remarkable poets, friends. So be very, very careful, and try to study the poem very seriously. Thank you very much.